Last week when I read my book, The Ugly Five, I was writing questions, and that's a skill that good readers do. They think about questions before reading a book, during reading, and after. They think about what the book makes them think about and then ask questions to try and figure out more information. So, another thing good readers do is they summarize and retell stories. I've already gotten you to do that this week using the finger puppets for the Three Little Pigs. Now, I have one more story for you in relation to the Three Little Pigs that I'm going to get you to do some summarising for. Summarising means saying the main things that happened in the text. So, I'll read you the text and then I'll show you what you have to do. Okay, so the story I'm going to read today is the true story of the Three Little Pigs. And I love this story. It's one of my favourites. So, if I was going to ask a question before reading this book, I would think, true story. Who's written this story? I can see some clues. And the picture, I'm thinking, oh, the wolf has written this story. But how do I know that it's the true story? I might have to find out as I read. Okay, so the true story of the Three Little Pigs. Everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think that you were big and bad too. But, like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold and I ran out of sugar. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbour for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbour was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a house out of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called out, little pig, are you in? No answer. I was about to go home without the cup of sugar, for my dear old granny's birthday cake. That's when my nose started to itch, and I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed, and I snuffed. And I sneezed a great sneeze. And you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of the pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the whole time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Think of it as a big cheeseburger lying there. I was feeling a little better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbour's house. This neighbour was the first little pig's brother. He was a little smarter, but not much. He had built his house out of sticks. I rang the bell on the stick house. Nobody answered. I called, Mr. Pig, Mr. Pig, are you in? He yelled back, Go away, Wolf, you can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin. I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. When the dust cleared, there was the second little pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honour. Ooh, I wonder if somebody didn't know what that would mean if you said wolf's honour. That would be a question I would have while reading this book. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out in the open, so I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family. He had built his house of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? And do you know what that rude little porker answered? Get out of here, Wolf. Don't bother me again. Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar, and he wouldn't give me even one little cup for my dear sweet old granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I sneezed once again. Then the third little pig yelled, And your old granny can sit on a pin. Sit on a pin? Why would he say that? Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course, I was trying to break down this pig's door, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. The rest, as they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound that very exciting. So they jazzed up the story with all that huff and puff and blow your house down. And they made me the big bad wolf. That's it. The real story, I was framed. But maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar. I love that story. It makes me laugh every time I read it. Some of the jokes in there are a bit funny, like, what a pig. So, I asked a few questions while I was reading because I was thinking about what I was reading. It made me think of some things that I wanted to find out. But back to what we're supposed to be doing today. Summarising. So, let's have a look at the sheet that I sent for you to do. So here's our summarising sheet, and it's got a space for you to write what happened in the beginning, middle and end. It's also got a spot for you to draw some pictures. I'm not going to draw any pictures today, but I would hope that you would draw some pictures of what happened in the true story of the 3 little pigs. So, summarising, what happened at the beginning of the story? Well, at the beginning, if we have a look back, he was telling us and trying to convince us that what happened was the real story. That he had a cold and that he was making a cake and needed sugar. So that was what was the beginning of the story. The wolf was making a cake and needed sugar. He also had a cold. Or I should say a sneeze, wasn't it? What did he say? He had a sneezing cold. He also had a sneezing cold. So that's the beginning of the story. It's setting up what happens. So he was making his cake, needed sugar, and he had a sneezing cold. What's happening in the middle? Well, in the middle, he's going to the pigs' houses, isn't he? And he's accidentally, so he says, blowing down their houses and eating the pigs for dinner. Oopsies. So he goes to the first and second little pig's house. He goes to, I'm going to write the first and second pigs, and I'm going to put an apostrophe S because the house belonged to the pigs. He goes to the first and second little pig's house. He blows down their house. And he does one more important thing. And eats them. Terrible wolf. Okay, so we've got the beginning, we've got the middle. What happens at the end? So at the end, he tries to go to the third little pig's house. And he gets arrested. And that's how he gets known as the big bad wolf. Okay, so I'm not going to write the last one in case you've been copying my first two. But that's your job. Finish summarising the book, what happens at the end. Add some pictures. And maybe you can have a go at summarising a book that you read by yourself. Telling what happens at the beginning, the middle and the end.